and all, welcome to Seen Through Glass. Welcome to the latest adventure in my Jaguar F-Type R. So I'm off to France. I'm going to be staying in Paris tonight before heading southwest towards the kind of Bordeaux and Toulouse region, actually for a friend's wedding. But it's a part of France I haven't really explored much before, so I'm excited to get down there in the Jag. Anyway, before I head across the channel, I've come down here to Kiklo, which is kind of like a car storage, car gallery, car event space. It's quite hard to describe, but it's housed in a beautiful building. And this morning they are hosting an event in collaboration with Classic Driver, celebrating 30 years of the iconic McLaren F1. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. There are 11 McLaren F1s in this room, a mixture of road cars and race cars. And because of the insane value McLaren F1s these days, that means total value of all these cars in this room, probably around £250 million. Good road cars go for about 15 million quid these days, the race cars on another level. But if you're a long-term viewer of this channel, you'll know that rarity and value isn't really that important to me. For me, it's all about stories. And what is epic about the cars that Kiklo and Classic Driver have got together is that the stories of each of these cars are fascinating. Now, on the day, the ever-awesome Philip Rathken from Classic Driver and Chris from Kiklo Spaces gave us kind of full walking tour of all the cars and things on display at the event. They gave us some amazing insights as to what it must have been to buy a brand new McLaren F1 back in the day. Also shared some of the incredible stories of the cars they had in their space. I'm now going to try and regurgitate some of those stories and insights with you now. Let's hope I don't get any of them wrong. This road car you may have seen before, even heard the story of. It's a super fascinating one, owned by the founder of Wayno Clinic, who obviously sponsored that first Le Mans victory back in 1995. Now, he said, okay, I want to go and buy that car that got that iconic victory. McLaren went, no, we're keeping hold of that, but what we will do is we'll offer you a road car in the same colours as the iconic Wayno Clinic livery. So it's this kind of, well, two-tone grey and silver really, and it's the only one in the world in this colour configuration. This car is unbelievably original, just around 5,000 or 6,000 kilometres on the clock. It is in beautiful condition, and as I say, because of its kind of importance and relevance to that McLaren F1 story, it's pretty special to see. Obviously all the gold heat shielding on display there, and that iconic cabin in a pretty low-key spec. But I have to say, if we all think of McLaren F1s in the kind of silver, this is the next best thing. These cars were insanely popular in Japan, and this car, number 12 ever produced, was actually delivered to Japan to a guy who was running Tag Heuer and Head tennis rackets at the time. He didn't have a driver's license. He bought this car as a promotional tool. He would take it to events, stick it up with Tag Heuer logos or Head tennis logos, and just leave it on display for people to go, ooh, wow, how ridiculous is that? Can you imagine buying a McLaren F1 without a driver's license? It's like today buying a Koenigsegg or a Bugatti Chiron and not being able to actually drive it. Fairly mind-boggling. The car behind is just another iconic silver with the black interior, the kind of ultimate, I think, image of a McLaren F1 road car. Next up, we have this very cool car, which, well, for me, has two things that make it special. Firstly, the number plate, F1 Joy, absolutely incredible. But also, look at this interior with the kind of blue suede Alcantara, then the blue leather and the red central seat inserts. Long-term viewers of this channel will know I'm a huge fan of a bold interior. The fact it ties in with the blue paint, yes, winning, go, go, go. I'm a big fan. And the final road-going McLaren F1 on display today is this red and cream example. Not a spec I think we associate with McLaren that much. It's more of a Ferrari specification, so it does look a little bit strange, but this car was actually originally delivered to Michael Andretti, the racing driver who at the time was signed to be a McLaren Grand Prix racer. But McLaren had another racing driver signed to them at the time called Mika Hakkinen, and they decided that he'd probably be a better bet to drive their F1 cars than Andretti, so they called him up and said, I'm so sorry, we're terminating your contract, but to kind of sweeten things, we'll give you a McLaren F1. So this is the car that they gave to him. Now, interestingly, at the time, McLaren F1s weren't able to be driven in America, so this car stayed in the UK, since then has changed hands. But yeah, I don't love the red and cream, but still the story is super cool. Well, now let's move on to the F1 race cars, because whilst the F1 road cars are iconic, so are the race cars. What's kind of crazy is McLaren originally had no plans to build an F1 race car. It was a customer called Ray Bellum, who at the time I think he was racing Porsche GT cars. He figured out that the F1 would probably be a pretty good race car, so he wrote to Ron Dennis and McLaren and tried to persuade them to build an F1 race car. And it took him a while to persuade them, but eventually he did, and thank God he did, because this car was absolutely outrageous right out of the box. Not only is it iconic looking, but if you look at its results, you realise how important, how impressive it was in the world of motorsport. This car right here, the first ever customer delivered GTR to Ray Bellum, won at its very first event, which is absolutely outrageous. Turned up and won. It wasn't always the quickest on its day. The Ferrari F40 at the time was often quicker in qualifying, but it had reliability issues, and it essentially meant that in the 1995 season, the F1 GTR cleaned up and, of course, famously won at its first attempt at the Le Mans 24 Hours. Now, sadly, it wasn't Ray who won Le Mans 24 Hours in this particular car. This is the most winningest F1 GTR, winning 6 races in total, but it missed out at Le Mans. The car that did win was the GTR 1R. This is 2R. It did carry this livery. Originally, this car wore a sort of bluish Golf livery. It was changed to the Wayno Clinic livery after the 1R was retired post Le Mans, but Wayno Clinic wanted to continue supporting the F1 GTR program, especially at the Suzuka endurance race, which this car went on to win. So yeah, absolutely iconic, and it is this livery that road car showed you earlier is kind of celebrating or honouring. You can see the two-tone paintwork. So this is, I mean, everything that F1 GTR is really all about. What's ridiculous is if we come over here, there's more F1 GTRs. This is a sort of 1995, 1996 hybrid, but with this iconic Caesar paintwork. It was all celebrating the art cars, BMW art cars. Of course, McLaren F1 powered with a BMW engine, so to kind of, you know, have a nod towards the art cars of BMW's past. They did another one, which was an artist called Caesar, and actually a very small thing I want to point out to you, because this is all hand painted. Little tiny detail here. Can you see that? That's a bee. Little tiny B and hand painted, absolutely spectacular. And then next to it, another sort of important car with regards to the world of BMW. Because BMW noticed how successful the F1 was in racing, they decided to essentially enter a couple of factory cars. So these Fina liveried cars are essentially BMW factory cars. Entered in 1996, they made some small changes to the car: front splitter, air intake, rear wing, and a few other bits and bobs. Wasn't quite as successful as the 1995 season, but for me, it's one of the most iconic liveries on the F1 GTR. And then finally, for the F1 race car, we moved on to the long-tail version, which came out for the 1997 season. This is actually the prototype car right here. On the right and on the left, we've got 2 race cars in the iconic Golf liveries. But yeah, this was the kind of initial idea, basically to take on the Porsche GT1 and the McLaren CLK, who were really pushing things forward in terms of endurance racing. And McLaren had to improve the GTR to be able to take those on, so they improved the aerodynamics, they reduced the weight of the car, a number of other changes. Unfortunately, it couldn't keep up with Porsche and Mercedes, but it left us with an absolutely iconic and beautiful looking race car, which today is still unbelievable on track. Now, whilst it's completely jaw-dropping to see that many McLaren F1s in one place, something really cool that Kiklo and Classic Driver have done is kind of amass all the stuff that a McLaren F1 owner would know about, but maybe we wouldn't know about, all the additional extras that surround McLaren F1 road cars and race cars. For example, this toolkit. So back in the early 90s, McLaren didn't have any service centres and didn't really have a particularly good after-sales department. So when you took delivery of your McLaren F1, you also got this tool set so that if you ever had any issues with your car, McLaren engineers could travel to your location and get to work on your car straight away because all the tools were already there. It's kind of a genius thing to think of. They didn't have to travel with a whole box of bits or maybe forget something in the factory by mistake. It was all ready to go, and it's pretty special actually to see a complete set like this with all the different things that you might need to work on and service a McLaren F1. F1 road cars also got a bespoke luggage set, which we can see fully on display. Here it included a kind of cleaning or detailing set from Autoglim, and that's pretty amazing that we can see a fully intact Japanese set right there. No idea if any of that stuff would still work. I would probably advise against using it on your car considering it's from the early 90s. But also there's the watch, made by Tag Heuer. Actually not that special a watch. Non-McLaren F1 versions can sell for a couple £100 on eBay, but the actual McLaren F1 edition was stamped with the chassis number of the relevant car. That chassis number appeared on the dial and also on the box, so they are now insanely sort of collectible and desirable items, especially if you actually own a McLaren F1. And finally, in this room, Kiklo and Classic Driver have got together a whole load of super important documentation from the early days of the F1. This is the original invitation to the launch, to the unveiling of the McLaren F1 back in 1992. So this is what you would have received if you were invited to the event and maybe invited to buy one of the cars. Super cool to see, as are some of the press materials from McLaren Grand Prix racing at that time. If we move along, there's more kind of press materials about the McLaren F1 itself. But I think this is unbelievably cool to see. This is the original letter from Ray Bellum, essentially asking Ron Dennis or McLaren to build an F1 race car. He wanted to take the F1 racing, and this was the letter that basically asked Ron and McLaren to build him that car. And just a little bit further along, we've got Ron agreeing to do so, to build the F1 GTR. Unbelievably cool history around the iconic car. What an unbelievable morning. What a ridiculous morning. My jaw is still kind of on the floor. I hope I got all that information right about those McLaren F1s. There was a lot of information to take in, and I kind of feel nervous now that I've messed some of it up. So if I've got anything wrong, correct me. I know you will. Lots of you out there super passionate and knowledgeable about McLaren F1, so check the comment section because somebody might have provided even more insight than I was able to do. Anyway, it's 11 o'clock and I've got a Eurotunnel to catch in 2.5 hours, and I'm 2 hours away from the Eurotunnel, so let's crack on. Lots of you are aware that Paris has a reputation for being a pretty crazy place to drive. People here like to use their bumpers and every inch of space available. It's kind of hectic. You've got to really pay attention, but also get your elbows out. We are now arriving at the famous Arc de Triomphe roundabout, and yeah, there are no rules here. I mean, you just kind of make it up and try and make sure that you don't hit anyone and no one hits you. Luckily, I'm not going that far round it, so... Oh, cyclist. Oh, and there's a Peugeot nearly in the back of me. Okay, so even though I only did about a quarter of that roundabout, still nearly died. But yeah, as intense as the driving experience is in this city, just like any major city around the world, driving here is amazing because of the architecture and the sights you get to take in, the fact that you're driving on roads that you've seen in films and on TV and on postcards. It's super cool. I do really like it, even though I'm taking my own life and my car's life, well, into my own hands every time I do it. Anyway, we are 1 minute from the hotel. Oh my God. Look at this. Ah, my bags are already here. Boys and girls, welcome to the Peninsula Paris. What is that? What is that? That's incredible. Look at that STG and the F-Type parked outside, and now also some kind of chocolate platter. What is going on here? These people have gone above and beyond. That bed looks very inviting. Oh, where does this lead out onto? Oh, what a view. There we go. Paris. Bonjour, Paris.
Good morning, my neighbours!
Oh look, there's a nice little Rolls-Royce Ghost. This is a perfect spotting location. I'm just going to stay up all night here, seeing what I can spot out of these windows. A nice 992 Cabriolet. Full disclosure, I booked and paid for this room. This is no ad. But during Drive the World, I stayed at the Peninsula in Hong Kong, and I remember it as being one of the best hotel experiences I've ever had, and I've always wanted to get back to a peninsula once again, and especially the one here in Paris, because apparently it's amazing, and well, so far, I agree. It's unbelievable, like, just the level of service, attention to the feeling. It's like a... Anyway, I don't want to get too carried away, but so far this place has absolutely blown my mind. I don't splurge on luxury that often, but firstly, whenever I'm in the F-Type, I always feel like I want to have sort of luxury experiences. That car just fits in with luxury experiences every now and again. Also, we're celebrating a few things. I'm not going to get into all that right now. More on that to come. But yeah, I had the opportunity to go all out tonight, and I'm so glad I did. Whether this is part of the normal Peninsula experience or not, who cares? Because just walking up to this room is already special enough. The fact I've got an F-Type chocolate platter and fruits and champagnes and chocolate biscuits. I want to explore the rest of this place.